And we are back on Capitol tonight. Environmentalists are picking their favorite lawmakers, and they are showing you the list. EPL environmental advocates have published their annual scorecard of who did the most to protect the environment and who did the least. The scores are based on how legislators vote on certain bills, with Ithaca area Assemblywoman Barbara Lifton taking top honors and Long Island Senator Lee Zeldin coming in last. Here to explain more about how these rankings work and also this year's top issues is EPL Executive Director Robert Moore. It's good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Not just last, but the Oil Slick Award.
Yes, Senator Zeldin earned
the
distinction of the Oil Slick Award this year, which we typically give to people that have done the most to kind of set the environmental debate back the furthest. It doesn't necessarily mean he got the lowest score. That honor goes to another member of the state Senate, but Senator Zeldin did several things that were not favorably reviewed by the environmental community.
Yeah, his big crime, if you will, like in connection with this particular list, is that he has been pushing to repeal the payroll tax, the commuter tax, sort of, the MTA payroll tax.
Yeah, it's a linchpin of the MTA's funding these days.
Yep.
And not only did he want to repeal it, he also then wanted to sweep money from the state's Clean Energy Trust Fund, which is funding things like installation of solar panels, windmills, things that are actually not only generating clean energy, but are one of the few things generating new jobs and employment opportunities in this state. So it was a real double whammy, and for that reason, among others, including wanting to make sure only people who go fishing in freshwater ecosystems and rivers and lakes of the state have to pay for a fishing license, whereas people that fish in Long Island Sound and marine waters don't have to pay for it.
Yeah, the sweeping of environmental funding is something that had been a problem for a long time, but actually you guys did better as a community than you had in years past in this particular budget.
Yeah, I think one of the things you can give Governor Cuomo some credit for is that he didn't go out of his way to injure environmental programs the way that we had seen under the last couple of years of the Patterson administration. Mm-hmm. There were some minor cuts at the DEC staff this year. However, they were not out of line with the cuts that other agencies received.
And one might say that is because he is thinking, although he does not personally say at this point, but the DEC seems to be moving in the direction of approving hydrofracking in the Marcellus. And so you would need all of those folks and then some to have oversight at the DEC if, in fact, you allow that kind of drilling. I
think that's true. I mean, the governor seems to be in a real hurry to see drilling occur next year. I mean, the directive has gone out to his agencies. DEC seems to be the only agency that's actually thought through what are going to be the resource implications for them. You know, they know that they're going to need a couple of hundred new employees to run the program they proposed. The other agencies that are also going to have to regulate various aspects of this seem to be caught somewhat flat-footed and are trying to catch up. Why the governor is putting such pressure on his agencies is beyond me. But we don't actually score the governor in the voter's guide. But we do provide a kind of a synopsis of his performance to date, and quite frankly, hydrofracking is going to be what makes or breaks his environmental legacy.
Oh yeah, I mean, before we get to that, because and hydrofracking is something we've been talking about a lot on this show, and we'll be talking about, I think, a lot going into the future. I just want to show people this is what it looks like here. Right? This is your report card. It's very lovely. Recycled paper, I'm sure.
100%.
You can also get it online. The reason that this is important to folks who think that it's important based on green issues are important and they want to know how their elected officials are making decisions and how folks like you who are keeping tabs on them think that these people are doing. So when you go into the voting booth next year, because there's no elections legislative level this year, you know, right? That's what this is for.
That's right. You want to know how your legislator performed on issues that you care a great deal about. And the story this year is not unlike a lot of the issues that have played out in Albany this year. The environment has been a very partisan battleground this year. We've seen a very strong split, perhaps stronger than even in past years, between Democrats and Republicans, between the Democratic-controlled Assembly and the Senate-controlled Republican-controlled Senate. Excuse me. Mm-hmm. So, you know, one of the things that really jumped out in this year's scorecard for us was that the Senate this year passed more anti-environmental bills than in any year since 2003. Almost twice the number, in fact exactly twice the number of anti-environmental bills as the last time the Republicans controlled that chamber, which was a very important election year.
And what do you attribute that to exactly?
Well, it's very similar to what's happening at the national level, where you see very entrenched thinking on issues like environmental protection, where you see this kind of dogmatic response to environmental issues, where there's not as much ability, I think, for individual members to really think for themselves. What's best for my district? What do my constituents really think about? And you see a real leadership-driven process where members are almost directed on how they're going to vote. And you can see that in the scores. In the Senate, the Republican Party average there is a 57, and Dean Skelos' own personal score is just marginally worse than that at a 55.
Well, when you talk about people who are actually acting on behalf of their respective districts, that's why, in large part, Assemblywoman Barbara Lifton got the recognition that she did, because she is speaking out about hydrofracking, which is a big deal in Ithaca, a huge deal in Ithaca, and that going forward, as you mentioned, is going to be pretty much the key environmental issue, perhaps not just in the coming year in 2012, but probably for the next 5 years.
Oh, most definitely. And Assemblywoman Lifton has done a magnificent job. She's been one of the most stalwart of champions on the environmental ramifications that could potentially arise because of hydrofracking. But she's also been right out there in front about defending communities' rights to control this process as well. She's the lead sponsor on a piece of legislation that reaffirms local communities' ability to zone or restrict land use, restrict truck traffic, and other activities that affect their municipality that are directly or indirectly related to hydrofracking.
You're seeing a lot of local communities actually pass local hydrofracking bans at municipal town boards, county legislatures, et cetera. Are those going to hold water? It seems that they're not legally binding.
Well, it's probably another disappointment of the Cuomo administration. His Department of Environmental Conservation has it within their ability to say, as part of their permit review process, they would pay attention to local zoning, local ordinances, etc. But according to the DEC, they're basically saying, hey, municipalities, you are completely on your own. We will acknowledge that local land use ordinances have to be honored. But as far as recognizing those ourselves, we won't do that. We're going to let little communities go up against the best attorneys that Exxon and Chesapeake Energy and some of the biggest energy companies on the planet can throw at these small communities.
Yeah, it seems that you could do a whole environmental scorecard next year based on fracking and nothing else.
We would love to do. In some ways, that would be a good thing. The one restriction on being able to do that is that the Senate hasn't acted on one piece of legislation dealing with hydrofracking. They have really resisted allowing those bills to come up and even be debated. It isn't even that there's not support. It's not even that they won't pass them. It's that they seem to fear even having a public debate or discussion on these bills.
Yeah, interesting. Also, I just should, we're out of time unfortunately, but before I let you go, Rob Moore, I just want to point out that it is not necessarily an inherent requirement if you're a Republican that you have to be anti-environment. For example, former Governor George Pataki took great pride in the fact that he considered himself a green governor, except for the fact that he was more along the idea of preserving open space. That was his big area of focus.
Right.
But he was pretty good from the environment, and there's not necessarily a requirement that if you're a GOP, you are.
No, and there's some notable Republican leaders on environmental issues. Senator Grisanti from Buffalo was instrumental in getting environmental legislation passed that will help control water withdrawals this year. Senator Fischillo from Long Island, also very instrumental in dealing with some environmental aspects of transportation issues. And you see people like Senator Greg Ball and Senator Mike Nozzola that are now coming out on the issue of hydrofracking and breaking with their conference colleagues. Yep, we're going to be talking a lot more about that and with them, I hope. In the meantime, I want to thank you very much for this, and also just quickly give the website because people can access this online. Absolutely. It's www.eplvotersguide.org. Okay, thanks very much. Great, thanks a lot.